right, take it away. Hi, everybody. Welcome. If you don't know where you are, you're in Londonderry, New Hampshire, so welcome. My name is Paul Skidlarek. I'm a local Democrat in Londonderry. I've run for state rep a couple of times. I'm expecting to run again this next upcoming term. Give it another shot. So what brings me here today, Amy Klobuchar is the first woman elected to the United States Senate in Minnesota history. And she is known for getting things done. In the Senate, she has gotten through the gridlock and passed more than 100 bills, from protecting our elections to improving school safety to helping rebuild our nation's infrastructure. You remember Infrastructure Week, right? We've had a few of those. She is taking on special interests to bring down everyday costs for families and protect consumers, including by leading the fight to take on pharmaceutical companies and lower the cost of prescription drugs. And as a candidate, she's not wasting any time. She has already released a plan of more than 100 concrete steps she will take in her first 100 days as president to take on the challenge of our time, priorities like economic justice, healthcare, and climate change. Senator Klobuchar also has a track record of winning that can't be beat. She has won every congressional district in Minnesota, the reddest of the red districts, purple districts, blue districts, in all three of her statewide elections. And last year, she won 42 of the rural counties that Donald Trump took in 2016, so we know she can win. I first met Amy, I'm sure she doesn't remember, but I met Amy during the 2016 presidential campaign. She was good enough to come to Londonderry and help kind of kick it off for us a little bit and get people enthusiastic, and really impressed by her at that time. And I've always been impressed by Amy's work on the Senate Judiciary, which is not an easy place to operate these days. For me, she's just a smart, very focused, tireless advocate for doing what's right and doing the things that can actually get done. And I look at her as somebody that's pragmatic with the right level of idealism. Today, Amy is running to fight for every American. So fresh off from an extremely strong debate performance, let's please give Amy a warm welcome to the senior senator from the great state of Minnesota and candidate for President of the United States, Amy Klobuchar.
Wow, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paul. Good luck. We know you can do this. It is just so I'm excited to be here in Londonderry. Our state director, Scott Merrick, right over here, driving around with us all day. Thank you for that. Okay, so I got in from Ohio. I don't know if I'll tell you at the end how much sleep I had. We'll just wait, and then you guys can guess. But anyway, we're going to be going on a 30-hour, 10-county tour in New Hampshire. We're pretty excited about that. I've already been to all counties, but we're going back. And I know my husband was recently here, my husband John, who during the debate, I couldn't decide if I wanted to look at him or not, because he's always like this. Oh. And I could say, just keep faking it, man. Just smile. Anyway, but he had a great time there. And so just thank you so much. Okay, so other people that are here, Annie is here, Annie Warner from the state rep, right? Been here for many years. Thank you. I just got to meet her out there. And also Ted, where are you? From the Coombs, from the City Council here. Thank you. And then Heidi over here, I met, right? State rep. And are there any others that I've missed? Heidi Hemer, right over here. From Manchester. Well, okay. Well, still, you're visiting. I can, Oh, yay. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, and then Peter Burling, I love, who's right back here, who's helping me out on the campaign trail from the North Country right there. recently got his endorsement. Thank you for that. And also, Tammy Seekman is here from Londonderry Dems, who helped us put this together. Thanks for that. All right. Very good. So, yeah, we had a debate last night. And I really, at first I thought this is going to be a nightmare with 12 people, but I actually thought it gave an opportunity for people if you sat through the whole thing. We covered a lot of ground. We did a little more on foreign policy than we have in the past. I see one of our great veterans here. Thank you for being here. Another one over there. And I think that that was actually really important to do, especially in light of what the president's been doing. And we couldn't be gathered here today at a more important time. I think they rightfully led with the question about impeachment. It's our job to remind people that we have this going on, which is our constitutional duty, especially those of us in the U.S. Senate. I had actually had a reporter ask me this just yesterday, actually, in addition to in the past. So would that change the schedule at all, the campaign schedule? Yes, it will, because we will have this constitutional duty if the House decides to bring over a case. And to step back on that a little bit, because it is, I think, on everyone's mind, and I think you can't just ignore it and pretend it's not happening. I think my point's going to be we're going to have to do two things at once, and the American people have been doing two things at once since the day this guy went into office, right? They've got to see him on TV with all his promises and all his mean tweets and all of this, and go on and do their jobs and try to explain to their kids why we have a president that talks like that and says those things. So that's how I think about it. Like, they've been through all this, and we're going to be able to do this too. But the reason we have those provisions for impeachment in the Constitution, since I'm in New Hampshire, a place that really understands the Constitution. My husband is actually a law professor, and he's like, he loves coming to New Hampshire. Like, people are interested in this. And so anyway, the provisions were put in there in the words of James Madison at the Constitutional Convention. He actually said that the reason we needed impeachment provisions is because you could have a president who would, quote, betray the trust to a foreign power. Betray the trust of the American people to a foreign power, which is exactly what this is about. And this isn't about a relitigation of the 2016 election, as horrific as that invasion of our democracy was. This isn't about the Mueller report, as really, when you really read through that, as disturbing as that pattern of conduct was. This is about ongoing conduct, right? This is about someone who's calling foreign leaders, and reportedly China. Think about all the things that have to be said to the president of China with what's been happening with this trade war and all we should be doing. Reportedly, the president brought up looking for dirt on one of his political opponents, Joe Biden, when he made that call. And he brought it up supposedly when he called the head of Australia. And he certainly brought it up, as we've all seen from this partial transcript, when he called the president of Ukraine, the new president. And so what this is, at its really simplistic level, is a leader of our country putting his own partisan interests, political interests, business interests in front of the interests of this country, looking for dirt. That's illegal, right? You can't do that in this country. You can't get things of value in a political campaign from a foreign power. So that is what the House is looking into. And all of these people and this array of diplomats that have been willing to come forward and tell their stories, including former Ambassador Yovanovitch, someone who I got to know when I went over there with John McCain. And that is what this is about. And all the other witnesses and evidence and things that come forward, it really is about that at its core. And what you have to see about Ukraine as well, and I think this is a good way to start our discussion about how I think we need to change what's going on in the White House and get a new president, is this is a fledgling democracy that relies on American aid, American help, and American credibility, something that's important to us because those Baltic nations are a very big, important part of the free world and of independent democracies. And the time, I've gone there twice, but the last time I went there was one of the last trips that Senator McCain ever took. And it's memorable to me and a good place to start because it's where I ended the debate, just continuing on. When they asked about Republicans that we had friendships with that people might not know about. And one of them for me was John McCain. Cindy just texted me as I was coming here, and I wrote back, I somehow believe you have been down all these roads before me. But he went on that trip after Donald Trump got elected, but before the inauguration. And we went on that trip, and it was, of course, his idea, because he just wanted to show those countries that we stood with them. I think he feared what was about to happen, but he mostly wanted to show that America stood with them. And Ukraine in particular, we spent 2 days there and went with the former president to the front line, where we met widows and we met the moms of soldiers who had just died only over the last few weeks under sniper fire. And we stood in the middle of a blizzard, because I always stand in the middle of blizzards. And we stood, we stood in the middle of a blizzard. And President Poroshenko wanted to show that American support, just as happened when we went to Georgia and Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia. And as we stood there, there's a little sideline wild story, but they wanted to show, the friendship. So they came over and presented John McCain with a Ukrainian-made machine gun in the blizzard on live TV on New Year's Eve. And with the snow coming at us. And I remember we were so freezing, but we were trying to, that's what I do, I guess. And then gave Lindsey Graham, who was with us, a pistol, and then presented me with this box. And I thought, and I opened it up, and it was 2 daggers. I'm like, wow, we're all in a row. And so then later they decided on their own, I was happy with my gift, but they decided that was sexist. And so they then in the hotel room in Kyiv presented me with a pistol. Then the Navy confiscated all the weapons. And literally to the end, McCain thought the whole story was so funny. And when I told that story last night of visiting him at his ranch when he was very sick and he could barely talk, but one of the things he did say to me once again, which he'd said many times since that visit, was, "Where's my machine gun?" So, and he just had this zest for politics that I couldn't explain in my 1 minute and 15 seconds of allotted time. But a zest for politics and a zest, and you didn't agree with everything, of course, that he said, but he cared a lot about our country. And I mentioned last night how the last words he pointed to me in his book, because he couldn't talk that well, were there's nothing more liberating than fighting for a cause larger than yourself. And that is really what this election is about. It truly is about that. Because we need to kind of leave behind, I think, we're going to have differences. And by the way, debates are good. Debates are about deciding, okay, I agree with that candidate on that, not quite on that, don't understand that. That's fine. That's why we have debates. But it is important to me that these not become personal. They have at times, but for the most part, they're debates. 2, that we remember that what unifies us is so much bigger than what divides us, and that has got to be an important override. And 3, and this is so key in a state like New Hampshire that has produced these incredible politicians, like 2 of my best friends in the U.S. Senate, Jeannie Shaheen and Maggie Hassan, who are, there are so many funny things about Minnesota and New Hampshire having things in common. I hope you know this. Not just sweaters and everything, but we're always show up at everything, at all the meetings and the briefings. And I cannot tell you how many times it's like 15 people and 4 of them are the senators from New Hampshire and Minnesota. The meeting to try to deal with the last shutdown, the meeting about the immigration, that group. Jean and Maggie were both in that group. When we had the shutdown that Ted Cruz caused, I'm not sure Maggie was here yet. I can't remember. No. Okay, the fact that you guys remember that is hilarious. Okay, but Jean was there, and so we were in that group that got started. It was half of the women, half of the senators in that group to end the shutdown were women, and we only are, now at most a quarter of the Senate. But they're just examples, and they're such leaders, and especially, well, both of them in both ways. But by the way, they're the first and second women in the history of the country that have served as both governor and U.S. senator, which is incredible. And they just both have so much, but I did mention Jean's leadership since she's up for office right now, but Jean's leadership when it comes to the world, really, with NATO and when Donald Trump has so let down our European allies time and time again, it's Jean that went over to that Munich conference, basically represented our country, so thank you. I just want to thank you for giving us these two incredible senators, so thank you for that. So, anyway, so we just have to remember what this election is about. And we know in New Hampshire, as we know from their elections through good and bad, that this is about a fired up Democratic base. And if you think I don't know about that, which candidate up there led the ticket when we had the highest voter turnout in the country? Okay, so I get turning out our Democrats. We get that, and I get that, and I've always done that every single time that I've led tickets. I have done that literally every single time. I think I'm not going to compete, but, maybe we were the best. Okay, but it's also about bringing independence with us, and if you don't believe me that I don't know about what it's like to have independence, I have 4 words for you. Former Governor Jesse Ventura. Okay, so we have independence in my state. And then also bringing along with us moderate Republicans. When I first got in, we had a Republican governor in Tim Pawlenty, right? We had the other senator was Republican. We had our legislative. Every time we've gone back and forth all the time. A little bit, you've seen some of that in this state. So I get what that means. And that doesn't mean that you just shut everyone out, especially when you want to just not eke by a presidential race, right? We don't just want to win, we want to win big. Why is that? As I look at our Supreme Court voter stickers over there. Why is that? Because we want to win the U.S. Senate in this election. You want to make that change. Well, then we've got to win in those states, and you know what they are, that have these open Senate seats. Of course, keep Jean, and I know she's going to be strong, win this. We know that. Yes, we know that. But there's always also all those other states that we can take back. And we only do that by having a candidate that can bring people with us. And yes, we can accomplish a lot, I think, anyway, with a new president, but we can accomplish so much more if we can win back the U.S. Senate. That matters for the court tremendously. That matters for climate change, for immigration reform, all of these things. So let me talk about where I come from. So I am someone that announced my candidacy in the middle of a blizzard. You all know that. It was I wanted to impress everyone in New Hampshire with 4 inches of snow on my head. But that point I made that day is the point I have made from the beginning. I have kept with the same focus, and that is that we need to cross the river of our divides to a higher plane in our politics. That's why I ended last night by talking about stop looking down at your phones and look at each other, because we need to change the tone. That's what that was about what our country stands for, that when things go bad, we don't run away, we go toward it. When that bridge collapsed over that river in Minneapolis, that was just a mile away from where I announced. It was just a few blocks from my house. What happened? Off-duty firefighter runs there, just happens to be around there, tethers herself to the side of the riverbank, diving in and out looking for survivors in those mangled cars and trucks. A tasty truck driver, he has 1 second to decide what to do. He could have rammed in the back of the school bus full of kids, but he decided, even though he was almost going to a certain death, to veer off and burns to death in his cab, but saves that school bus. The school bus that plummets 30 feet down and is hanging on a guardrail. A school camp counselor named Hernandez, a young guy, the back of the bus opens up, looks like it's going to go over. He has a second to decide, is he going to run off that bus? He gets all 30 kids off that bus to safety. That is America. That is what holds us all together. That idea that we look out for each other. And I'm running because what I see in this president is someone that destroys that fabric every single day with every mean tweet. And I know that we are a better country than this. I know it. And I know it because I see it. I look at all you guys turned out, tonight. There is so much more, especially those of you that watch that whole debate and then you show up tonight. Oh my God. There is just so much of the spirit, of the civic spirit in this country. And we just can't let this guy take it away from us. The other reason, of course, is that we know we have challenges in this country. So what does he do? Well, he comes in, and because of the resilience of our workers and the resilience of our businesses, we got out of that downturn. And when you are a leader and you come into a situation, you don't gloat about what other people did. He had nothing to do with us getting out of that downturn. But what does he do? He comes into the White House and he gloats. The numbers, instead of focusing on the challenges before him. It's like having, if you're a small business and you have a good something that it's a nice bowl you got there. You do not just develop one product from 10 years ago and never think of something else. Or if your kid comes home with a good report card in 4th grade with some A's, you don't go, we're done, see you after college. There's challenges ahead. Our challenges are so clear. I did an event on the Seacoast on climate change, right? You're already seeing what's happening in New Hampshire. The oyster fishermen off of Maine, the changes that they've seen, the Seacoast in Maine. You've seen the changes in the weather and the changes to our wildlife, just like we've seen in Minnesota with tremendous changes to our moose population. We've seen the weird weather patterns that come in, the hurricanes, and these high-level hurricanes that we'd never seen before, time after time after time. But then we've also seen things like wildfires, like they just had in California, like we saw in Colorado and Arizona, flooding and storms in the Midwest. And for me, it all came down to this woman named Fran who had me look through her binoculars. And she said, look, that's my house, and that's a house that I got with my husband and our 4-year-old twins, and we were going to retire in that house. And she said, I love the kitchen. I love the way the light comes in the kitchen. And I don't know if I'll ever sit in that kitchen again. And I said, well, where is the kitchen? She said, no, the whole first floor is underwater. And she said, it's this old house. It's 100 years old, horsehair in the plaster, and the water's never come close to it before. And then I said, well, is this the river? Because I was thinking, Fran, you bought a house by the river because the water is raging by. She said, no, that's the road. She said, the river is 2.5 miles away, and it's never come even close to this house before. That's climate change. It is not happening in 100 years. It's happening right now. And that's why on day one, I would get us back into that international climate change agreement. On day one. What do we need to do? On day 2, bring back those clean power rules. By the way, I have a list of over 100 things a president can do without Congress that are legal, that are on our website at amyklobuchar.com. And on day 2, bring back those clean power rules. On day 3, the gas mileage standards. By the way, those are the same ones that California tried to do on their own when Donald Trump took them away. The car manufacturers were willing to do them. They actually wanted to do them. And do you know what he did then? I'm an expert on antitrust, so this is a crazy story. When they were working with California, some of the car companies, to do it, he then threatened them, his Justice Department, with an antitrust violation for simply trying to work on those gas mileage standards. That is how badly they want to hurt our environment and disprove the science and not believe in the science. That's what these guys do. And then, of course, sweeping legislation to get at climate change. Another challenge, workforce training, big challenge here. And that is everything from making sure our K through 12 education system is funded the way it should, and making sure we increase teacher pay. My mom taught 2nd grade until she was 70 years old. I care about that issue. I pay for it by simply bringing the estate tax numbers down to where they were during the Obama administration. So that would be very important in New Hampshire. And then you work your way up. We have so many job openings right now for 1- and 2-year degrees. I was at Manchester Community College, and they said a large percentage, I don't know, was in the 10, 20s, higher than the national average of around 10% of their students actually have 4-year degrees when they go to the 2-year degree. And so that shows you something's a little bit off right now. Some of it is that there's people need new jobs because some of our jobs change, and some of it that is perhaps this idea that you start with a 1- and 2-year degree first. Not for everyone. A lot of kids are going to start with a 4-year degree, but we have to make that a very, very big and affordable option. And that's why I favor the 1- and 2-year degrees being free, an emphasis on apprenticeships, and then doubling the Pell Grants. That's the grants you can get now. If you're making up to $50,000, you move it up to $100,000, you double the Pell Grants to $12,000, it makes a big difference. So that's a big part of the hooking the jobs we have right now and will have in the future to our education system, right? Instead of making up and telling people, anything that sounds good on a bumper sticker, I really think we have to dig deeper than that and figure out how we're going to make this work. Another piece of this, immigration reform. And I have worked on this since I got to the U.S. Senate. I believe we can get this done in the first year. In my heart of hearts, there's a bunch of Republicans that want to work on it, right? They actually voted for it in 2013, and then it died over in the House in John Boehner's freezer next to the frozen peas. But this is something that a new president can get done. Why? For budget-conscious people of New Hampshire. It brings the deficit down by $158 billion in 10 years. It was Grover Norquist's biggest priority because, thank you people that care about that. Number two, we need it for our economy. We need workers in our factories, and we need workers in our fields, and we need workers in our nursing homes and in our hospitals and starting small businesses. And we know that immigrants, when you look at our economy, look at the actual studies and the numbers, immigrants don't diminish America, they are America. So it is an economic imperative. And this is all, I was actually glad that we had this discussion last night about automation and all that. We need to have bigger discussions about our economy, because I actually see these as opportunities, right? If we want to keep growing and competing in the global environment, and we shouldn't see these as negative. These are challenges that we have to meet, especially in states like yours and mine that have low unemployment rates, and we have to figure out how to make that. And another big piece of this, infrastructure, including rail to southern New Hampshire. I am completely... This is literally, I did an event with Joyce. I liked your campaign slogan, the choice is Joyce, in Manchester about this, the mayor of Manchester. And when you really look at the numbers, this is southern New Hampshire is the most congested area in the country that doesn't have commuter rail. That is a true story. So we've got a good case to make, and it's not even that expensive. And it'll help bring people to jobs, and it'll help make it easier for young people, many of whom, like my daughter, that don't really want to have cars. It's just there's a lot of good things with this commuter rail for this area. But to do that, you have to actually not just be bogusly say, oh, yeah, I'm going to do an infrastructure package because my name's on a tower. My name's not on a tower, so I don't have that. But to actually get it done. And this guy promised this on election night and never delivered. And so I'm really excited about this. I was the first candidate to come out with an infrastructure package for $1 trillion, all paid for. I show how I'm going to pay for every single thing I propose, with them rollback so that corporate tax and changing the international tax rate, doing Buy America bonds, which is a bipartisan proposal right now that Senator Hoeven and Wyden have. I like to make part of these things I know are easy to do. Financing Authority, which is a bipartisan proposal right now that Senator Warner and Senator Blunt have. And through all this, you get to over $1 trillion. And that is exactly what we'll need to get this Manchester rail done, or this southern, let's call it in Londonderry, southern New Hampshire rail. Southern New Hampshire rail done. So I think that's exciting. All right. Other challenges, healthcare. We had a big debate on that. I will go quickly. This idea that I'm for a public option to bring down the costs. The studies show will cover 12 million more people, bring down the healthcare premiums for 13 million. That's an Urban Institute study. Also, focusing on bringing those farmer prices down with more competition. In Minnesota, New Hampshire, we can see Canada from our porch. You see those numbers. I've always led those bills. Actually, Bernie and I led the bill, the amendment vote, which was very close, to bring in less expensive drugs from other countries. That was the last time we voted on that, from safe places. Also, Medicare negotiation. I lead that bill. We have 34 senators right now. As president, I can get these things done. It is going to make a big difference to have someone in there that isn't just talking the talk, but actually takes them on. And then other things that maybe we can get to in the questions: mental health. 1 out of 5 Americans struggles with mental health sometime in their life. Yet we don't have enough mental health public beds in our hospitals around the country. We don't have enough help for people who are addicted. I was just visiting one of your recovery centers and have been at a number of them throughout New Hampshire. I know the effects of the opioid epidemic, and we know what's happened there and the money that's going there. And my point I will make that I made last night: those pharma companies that got people addicted, the ones that manufactured the opioids, the one that sent out the email that said, oh, hey, they're getting hooked on them like Doritos, let's keep pushing them out, they should pay for the treatment for the people that have gotten addicted. But I think one of the things that I couldn't say last night because I didn't have enough time was just there's a lot of depth to this issue that, you know, there's other drugs as well. There's still issues with meth. There's still issues with crack cocaine, especially in our African-American neighborhoods. And we have a lot of problems going on still with addiction. And you combine that with mental health. And no one has really taken this on as a president in a big, big way. For me, it's personal. My dad struggled with alcoholism my whole life growing up. He had 3 DWIs by the time my husband and I got married. And in his words, he was pursued by grace because the system said, you got to make a choice. It's going to be jail or treatment. And he chose treatment. And he has basically been sober ever since. And that is after years of getting some treatment, pretending he was in treatment, doing all kinds of things. So I have lived through this my whole life. And that's why taking this on in a big way. And of course, with prescription drugs, it's limiting the numbers that are prescribed, but it's way beyond that in terms of the treatment, drug courts, all of that. And I'm really excited to work on that issue. So that's a tour through what some of the challenges I see ahead, and as you know, income inequality and how we're going to get at that with changes to our tax code is going to be key as well. And I'll end where I began, and that is with our dealings with the rest of the world. We have got to really regain our integrity with the rest of the world. It's going to start hurting us, already has economically with how he's handled the trade war. I come from the middle of the country. We've seen those soybeans mounting up in the bins. New Hampshire's a state that does a lot of trade, and you know what that means as well. You see what it means for our integrity with our allies. Every single agreement this guy tries to find a way to get out of. The Iranian nuclear agreement, it wasn't perfect, but it did what it was supposed to do, and that is that Iran stopped enriching uranium to get to a nuclear weapon. Now they've started doing it again. They're out toward moving towards busting the caps. What did that do to get out of it? He could say he didn't like it. He could say he wouldn't have voted for it. But once we were in it, what did he do to get out of it? He just left it with our allies holding the bag. He gave power to China and Russia. He did the same thing when he got out of the International Climate Change Agreement because no one trusted us. He did the same thing when he got out of the nuclear agreement with Russia. While they were cheating, he should have stayed in it and tried to work with our allies to fix it. So what I believe is you need to work with your allies. You don't coddle dictators like he has done. You don't bring down America's reputation in the world in that way. And there are so many changes we have to make to change the way we approach things around the world. I'm a big believer in diplomacy, and one of the big things we need to do is to build up the integrity of the State Department again. And that's going to start with a new Secretary of State, but it's also going to be bringing in young people again to foreign service. So we've got a lot to do, but what we've got to do most of all, my friends, is to win. And we have to win by in a way that we've never won before. Because if we really want to take back the Senate and make those changes, then we're going to have to put away some of our divides. And we're going to keep making that a point, a number of us on that debate stage. We have to do that. And I am excited at the possibility of leading this ticket. And I'm here to ask for your support. I'm here because I am in that tradition of believing that our country is bigger than what we've got going on, that mess in Washington right now. I'm someone that looks for the good in people and finds good in people, well, almost everyone. And I'm going to continue to do that. I'm someone that loves getting things done. As Paul pointed out, I passed over 100 bills where I was the lead Democrat. And it is just in my core. So I want to thank you for coming. Just let you know we are building a great operation here. I've learned how to do everything in New Hampshire. Okay, I haven't been to Max Apples yet. There we go. But I eat Stonyfield yogurt, so there you go. Let's see, I can say everything right. Concord, Winnipesaukee, Berlin. What? I said Berlin. No, I did. I said it right. No, I get it. I said it right. Anyway, I did. Oh, thank you. Oh, my goodness. We're going to have like an outcry in the town hall meeting. It's something out of like a bad TV show. Okay. All right. So we're going to do questions. We're going to get some. We'll maybe take a few, but we'll also have call-on people from here. We found this helps shy people, and we get more questions from women this way. Not that they're shy. They just get tired of raising their hand. Okay, let's see. Here we go. So Carol from Merrimack. Where are you, Carol? Right here, right in the front row. So let's see. Okay, why don't you talk about, how do we address opioid abuse, right?
I'm concerned that we do need to address the abuse issue. But a byproduct of that is people who have legitimate needs for opioid prescriptions are finding it harder and harder to fill those prescriptions.
Very good. Yeah, and that is, that's right, but we want to make sure that people are legitimately getting those opioids from the doctors, and they still prescribe opioids. I think the issue is,
With the prescription, but you go to the drugstore and they say the DEA won't allow anymore to be manufactured, so you still can't fill
oh, I see. Okay, well, I'll look into that, but I think, we had a major problem with doctors and doctor shopping. I found one counselor told me in Moorhead, which is on the North Dakota border once, that he had something like, he had a guy that had gone to like 50 different doctors and gotten prescriptions all over the Midwest and gotten them over 100. It was an unbelievable number. I don't want to get the numbers boggled up and get some kind of Pinocchio, but it was just unbelievable numbers and you see that all the time. And then you have really the saddest stories. Well, they're all sad, but the kid that I got to know her mom very, very well. And her daughter, Casey Jo, was a champion swimmer in high school, went to the emergency room, was sick, had Crohn's disease, was prescribed opioids, got addicted, and literally just a few years later died of a heroin overdose. And one of the last times she talked to her mom, she said to her mom, "Mommy, it's not my fault." And I think that's what a lot of us say. So you understand what's went on here is that doctors, some unknowingly, some not being careful enough, but a lot unknowingly, first of all, thought it was okay to give them because they've been told by the drug companies it was okay. And then this enormous addiction developed for so many people. So it is really a sad situation. So that is true. They've started giving less for wisdom teeth, 3 in some of the states, including Massachusetts, and I don't know what New Hampshire's done, but have put limits on the number of opioids, and that I think is a positive. But then, of course, we've got illegal fentanyl coming in. We lost Prince in Minnesota, which was, and it's not just celebrities, but that was a day I won't forget. So when you think of someone like that, a superstar, and he couldn't get over his addiction. So that's why, and I'm sure I get it, I get it, and I think we just have to make sure that the doctors are quite aware of what they're doing and why, and that we have good training of medical professionals, and what was happening in some communities where certain doctors were giving them out, so I get it. All right? Okay, here we go. Yep. Okay, should the U.S. re-enter the Iranian nuclear deal? This is from Dennis in Manchester. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay. Want to say anything more about that? Or just, yeah. That's where you wrote the question down, so you went, okay, all right. So that is for sure. So I supported the Iranian agreement. I didn't think it was perfect. I'd like to see longer sunset periods. But this was always one of the major priorities for our foreign policy in the Mideast and really in the world, which was to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Iran is a very dangerous player on the international scene, and we know that, and we certainly know that from, as you've seen in the news reports of what just recently happened with Saudi Arabia and the what happened with their oil fields, but we know it in so many ways. We have, Minnesota actually had the hiker that was just happened into the wrong part of Iran and got imprisoned, and I got to know their family as we worked to get him home, and we did ultimately do that. But there's just many bad things about Iran, but that doesn't mean you want them to have a nuclear weapon. And that's why President Obama worked so hard to get that agreement and to work with our allies. And it was working. There were international inspections, and they stopped their march to a nuclear weapon. And then what happens? Donald Trump comes in and he makes a bunch of promises at campaign rallies and his chants and other things. And then when in leadership, he still could have said, you know what, yeah, I don't like this, but I'm going to keep us in it because it's the best for our world. But he didn't do that. There were a few members of his party that I think quietly didn't want that to happen and tried to stop it. But they didn't stand up, and they didn't stand up loud enough. And then we're out of the agreement, and now we are where we are. And as I said, we're going to have, we now have our allies trying to figure out how to relieve sanctions so that they don't enrich uranium. You've got Russia and China, just like you just saw, where in the case of Russia, where the president made the rash decision to remove 150 troops from the border. And in fact, I think that area in Syria, if I remember right, is an area actually that Jean Shaheen had gone to that area, and removes the troops, and then, big surprise, Erdogan goes in there and starts slaughtering Kurds, and then another not so big surprise, Russia comes in, gains power, which means Iran gains power, which means Assad gains power, and the march goes on. And he didn't have to do that, but that's what he did. And it's very similar to him getting out of that agreement. It's not easy making these decisions. They're tough decisions to make, but you've got to make them first and foremost with the safety of our world and the safety of our country. And the number one job of the commander-in-chief is keeping our country safe. And there's many ways you do that, right? It's not always with military action. A lot of times it's making tough decisions with our allies. It's giving foreign aid to places like, I think about one that isn't the greatest place in the world, but I'm very involved in it just because we have such a big population in Minnesota of Somalia, because you had terrorist groups that gained a foothold there. They're making threats. You had people in my own state going there to fight with terrorists. And so we'd always done foreign aid in that area, and they were trying to cut that out. And I actually joined forces with a Republican congressman from my state, Tom Emmer, to say no, that actually that wasn't good for security. It's General Mattis, who I wish was still there, the Secretary of Defense, that said, well, you don't give in foreign aid or you don't give in diplomacy, he has to buy in bullets, and he doesn't want to do that. And I think no one understands better than our veterans what this means. People that actually have put their lives on the line for our country, that you don't mess around. And when you have a disagreement on policy, you don't put it out on the soldiers on the front line. And basically that's what he did, by the way, to the Kurds, right, to our allies. Because you can disagree all you want. That's something we learned after Vietnam the hard way. that you can have disagreements about war policy, but you don't take it out on the warriors on the front line. And I think we've got better about that since that time. All right? Oh, and by the way, we just put out a veterans policy that we announced here in New Hampshire with your former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, and that actually was ramping up and taking on some of the new signature illnesses that we've seen with burn pits, as well as, of course, brain injuries and others out of these last wars, and making it easier for veterans to get health care as well as jobs. Okay, Bill Franklin from Londonderry. Okay, I think I answered this one. Where are you? Yeah? Yeah, it was on transportation, right? Really? Okay, I like this. We've had a lot of sort of esoteric, but this is right, get direct. Yes, you spend a lot of time in traffic? Mm-hmm. Yes, very good. Yeah, I once had a very scary drive with my daughter when she was in high school looking at colleges, where luckily I ended with having dinner with Jean Shaheen, where I felt safe. I was like, oh, man. So anyway, I think that what this rail that we just talked about, I think is really a high priority. I think you also know, so this plan I put out has a major focus on green infrastructure as well. And of course, rail and commuter options are a big part of that. And I think that's what we need to do. But we really have to have the will to do it. And again, it's another broken promise. And I think it's going to be really important to put this out, since I talked about this already, to a political context, is there's about nearly 10% of the people that voted for Donald Trump that voted for Barack Obama, right? And a lot of them, as you look at the states that are going to be key in the middle of the country, as well as, of course, New Hampshire, that Hillary won by a higher percentage, by the way, than Minnesota. Because there was such an issue in the Midwest. And there were a lot of workers who thought, okay, he's going to build stuff, he's going to do infrastructure. And it's going to be really on me, if I'm leading this ticket, to make that case to them that he has broken promises. And I recently went on this Blue Wall tour to Pennsylvania and to Wisconsin and to Michigan, and then ending in Iowa. And of course, just the last few days I was in Ohio, in Toledo, with Congresswoman Capter, and then over to Cleveland, and then to Dayton with the mayor of Dayton, right in the neighborhood where that shooting had happened. When you talk to people in those areas, and carpenters in Pittsburgh, and to port workers in Michigan, you can see what's happening. They're starting to see that this guy is not keeping his promises. And it is on us to make that case to them, because he promised us a bunch. And these people are working really hard every single day. And as I point out to them, so what does he do when things start going wrong? He golfs. Okay, that's it. This would be really funny to do like a test to see what people. Okay, he golfs. What else? Tweets. He tweets. Okay, what else? Lies. Watches Fox News. Okay, this is like therapeutic for us. I feel like I should be one of those people in a pantsuit writing those Post-its on the board. Okay, what else, everyone? What else, everyone? Okay, that's what always at workplaces. What else do you want to do? Okay, so, but you know what else he does is he blames people, right? He blames everyone. He blames the head of the Federal Reserve. He blames Barack Obama. He blames the city of Baltimore. He blames the entire country of Greenland. I did a tweet. By the way, I think using humor on this guy, as you saw me do from time to time, is going to be really, really important. And my tweet that did better than his for 5 days was when I said, what's the difference between, I wrote it in the parking lot in Manchester, outside of the hotel. What's the difference between Greenland and Donald Trump? Greenland is not for sale. So it is, using humor is going to make a difference. but also because you got to point out what he's really about, that he's a whiner, really. That's what he does. He whines. While they're out working, he whines. And so I bring that up with infrastructure because we've got a lot of workers out there all over the country, including here in New Hampshire, but also in the middle of the country. And as I said last night, we're going to build a blue wall around those states in the middle of the country if I'm leading the ticket, and we're going to make Donald Trump pay for it. Okay, that is our plan. Okay, I'll do a lightning round. Here we are. Okay, Judy from Canterbury. Where is it? Right there. Okay, what actions will you take to reduce the danger of nuclear war, which is again growing? And go ahead. Yes, in 2022, it's going to be up again. And we were involved in that before. And I remember John Kerry being in the Senate and playing a major role with that. And of course, President Obama. And so there's two nuclear treaties. One he's gotten us out of. And then there's this one that's going to be up again for reauthorization in 2022. Of course, I'm a strong supporter of keeping that treaty strong, and it's just like the arguments we made with the Iranian nuclear agreement. So, and the problem with this guy is he just, he starts talking about nuking hurricanes, right? I mean, he's just, because he thinks it sounds tough, that's what he wants to do. Okay, this is from Donna, right? You? Okay, you are so excited. Why don't you stand up and ask the question? It's probably a different Donna. No, ask your question. It's about green economy. Is that you? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering what your specific plan would be to talk about the green economy. How would you increase jobs?
Right. Exactly. Well, I think we all know that there's some really exciting new jobs, and one of the growing areas is, say, windmill technicians and things like that. There really are some well-paying. I've been told we got a lot of wind in the middle of the country, and so I have been to these places. So it is really, and we've just begun in terms of what we can do with renewable energy. So let me first say that I'm all for, and we think there's general agreement up on that stage. We just had a climate town hall it's worth looking at that CNN did for a half hour each. And there's general agreement to get to carbon neutral by 2050 and to have a 40% reduction by 2030. Is that right, Rosa? Where are you, man? Oh, there she is. Okay, today I declared Rosa Poe was with me in the official office, and now she's running our policy. She's incredibly smart. She was with me through this whole debate prep, and then, like me, God, are you ready for this? Now I'll tell you how much sleep we really got. 3.5 hours sleep last night. Pretty good, huh? And then got here because we did this, and I got up and did Morning Joe. So today is Rosa Poe International Appreciation Day. But am I right? Am I right with 3.5 hours sleep that it was a 40% reduction by 2030? Yes. Okay, so that is the benchmark there. And so you have to have these benchmarks in place that are actually in law to do this. And you do it some ways. One is these things I mentioned earlier that you can do without Congress. But the other thing is then going to be to put a price on carbon. And there's a few ways you can do it. You can do it just with a carbon tax. You can do it with cap and trade, which is what we passed in the House last time, but not in the Senate, which, by the way, just had a bad name. So if we do this, we should have some other name. It just didn't work. People would say in parades, and I supported it strongly, but they'd say in parades, no on caps, no on trades to me. I'm like, okay, no, it's the same. So I think that we could have a better name. The third thing then was like a renewable electricity standard like we've done in a number of states. It's worked well in my state. We were out early with it with a Republican governor, and back then it was bipartisan to get that done, and you could do that nationally. But one of the key things when you do this, because I think it's going to create a whole bunch of new jobs, including investment, you've got to make sure that money goes to the people that need it, because you just cannot make a major hit on people that have already been hit by Donald Trump's decisions with the economy. And then the other thing you're going to have is certain areas of the country that have, of course, coal and things like that, and you're already seeing the closure of these coal mines, and you're going to see changes, and you're going to have to invest not just in green energy jobs in those communities, I think in any kind of manufacturing. I went through this this was iron ore mines, which are different. We still mine iron ore for steel. It's pretty important to our country, and they're now reopening because of work we did at the end of the Obama administration with stopping steel dumping that I was very involved in. But what I saw with my grandpa working there, and so many of my relatives and people from up north, open and close, and the effect that has on the economy. And one time outside of Duluth, Minnesota, they actually put up a billboard that said, "The last one to leave, turn off the lights." So I see this climate change as the crisis of our time, the thing we have to meet. But I also see that we can do this in a smart way to make sure we don't leave these communities behind. And a lot of it is because we're going to have all these new jobs coming out. But then we have to make sure that we're putting the investment, not just for green jobs, in those communities, that we're making sure people who are going to be affected by the cost of this get some help. But it's going to be a lot of money coming in when you start pricing out carbon. So that is what we're doing. So I'm actually see this as an opportunity. I do. And it's also something Jean has been such a leader on, energy efficiency. I always tease her. It's called, you ready for a bad climate change joke? Building a fridge to the next century. Yay! Okay, come on. You guys. Okay, so, and she has been the leader on that. She actually has passed some things on it, and including some of my provisions that were in her bill. But I think she would tell you there's even more that we can do when it comes to that. So I hope you view these things, because some of them actually are exciting opportunities. This is a state that believes in entrepreneurship and new ideas and also holds up ideals. I got the tour of the Bretton Woods tour from Scott's mom, who happens to be an expert on it, long story. And just this is a state that understands that. So let's keep that in mind as a guiding light here as we go forward. So I'm excited to see all of you. We're going to do some pictures, right? Okay, good. I'm still somehow going to go to a diner and do the Lawrence O'Donnell show. What can go wrong, you know? It's just like when I did the Bill Maher show last Friday night with Howard Stern on. What can go wrong? Okay, so we're going to get out there. We need you to sign up and help if you'll sign up with us. This is a different kind of campaign. You know that. I've met every single bar they put in front of me. The unique donors, only in New Hampshire, by the way, did I have a kid come up to me and say, "These are my parents. They're both your unique donors." I'm like, seriously? Or only in New Hampshire did this kid called Quinn, who's 11 years old, who was sitting in the front row, actually ask a question during the Mueller report and said, do you think it's best that Mueller comes and testifies at the Senate Intelligence Committee or the Judiciary Committee? He is 11 years old, okay? So you guys are informed. You understand grassroots campaigns. You understand that the person that a lot of times wins this is the person that has been out there, that have made their case, where people have listened, people have decided they can lead this ticket, not the first choice that comes out. And you know that, and that's happened so many times. I met with Jimmy Carter when I was thinking of running. I went down to Plains, and he talked about New Hampshire, and he talked about all the places he stayed at, and Jeannie, and everything that happened. He actually had invited the 700 homes that he or a Carter family member had stayed in New Hampshire and Iowa, some of the other states. After he won, he invited them to the White House and gave them each a plaque that said, he just talked to me about how important that was. Now, that was a long time ago. He said his big development was a fax machine on his plane. But that doesn't mean that it's not meaningful history for all of us. And I guess I will end with this. When I did the Georgia Democratic Dinner years back, I toured that Carter Library because, of course, Carter had picked Mondale for his vice president. And I was the Minnesota geek walking around looking for Minnesota memorabilia, like where's Joan's dress and things like that. And I saw these words on the wall, and I wrote them down, and I put them in my pocket. And I did this pre-Trump. Didn't even understand how meaningful they'd be, but I thought, well, these are nice and something to remember. And it was something Mondale said after they lost the election, looking back at their 4 years, which were, of course, imperfect, but looking back at them, he said this: we told the truth, we obeyed the law, we kept the peace. We told the truth, we obeyed the law, we kept the peace. I don't know. That is a minimum that we should expect from the President of the United States, and I promise you I will be much more than that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. All right. Thank you. Okay.
Come down here.